God, we thank you so much for the opportunity to receive this word about our voices and how our voices matter. Thank you for today allowing us to see and recognize the courage in our voices. Now, God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Thank you so very much for being our strength and our Redeemer. It is in your name that we pray, give thanks, and know it to be so. Amen. Friday, I received a text message from Wendy, our administrative assistant, asking if I had a chance to send her some words for the newsletter. I sent them by text because the internet was not working well at the location I was. And I asked her if once I sent it, if she could give the words that I sent a once over. She did, and she responded asking if I had time to talk. And so we talked. And in that conversation, she told me of a young woman who had come to the church saying that she needed prayer and asked for a Bible. That sounds really simple, right? However, when it feels like your back is against the wall and hope is waning away, or when you feel like you're down to your last resort, sometimes the last thing that you want to do is both the one thing that you need to do and the best thing that you can do. That was a lot, so I'll say it again. Sometimes the last thing that you want to do is the one thing that you need to do and the best thing that you could do. And so this woman, whose name is Anita, did just that. She got to the church. She got to the door. She got to the people, being Marsha and Alan and Wendy, and she used her voice and engaged courage in such an audacious way to name what she needed. And I wonder if not only as a woman, but as a mother, she knew of this mother in our text. But before we go there, let's go here. We are all familiar with the adage that says actions speak louder than words. And at times, our actions are the only words heard because of courage. And it is that courage in our voice, but also that courage is our voice. And for this Syrophoenician mama, courage was activated the moment she heard about Jesus. She had the mental fortitude that let her know that she had to. She knew she had to get to him. She knew that she had one shot, and maybe not the only shot, but she at least had one. She knew that things had to change in her daughter, in herself, and in her household. And she knew she had to take this opportunity. And so she enacted and engaged the courage to do so. See, she spoke long before she actually said anything. She spoke when she likely ran from her house to the house where Jesus was hiding. She spoke when she either knocked frantically on the door or burst right through it. Has anybody ever considered that we don't know how far she traveled from her home to get to where Jesus was? Has anybody ever considered how she even got to the house? Because the text does not tell us. We just know that she was there at Jesus' feet. We know that she knew that she had to get there, just like Anita had to get here. And I'd venture to say that courage had something to do with that. This Syrophoenician mama continued to speak in her actions when she fell at Jesus' feet. Now notice how her culture and her race aren't mentioned until after she fell at Jesus' feet. And it is then that Mark gives us these specific details about who she is and where she's from, instead of letting her be the mother coming to get relief for her daughter, for herself, and for her household because of this mean, uncontrollable, and unclean spirit. Granted, These details matter, but what if they did not need to? They didn't matter to Courage. Courage wasn't concerned with where she came from or who she was. Courage knew that it was needed, and Courage asked no questions. It simply showed up. And so did this mama. She didn't ask questions. She didn't know that Jesus wanted to be hidden, and she didn't care that Jesus wanted to be hidden, and I don't blame her. She needed peace, and she needed healing for her daughter, for herself, and for her household. And you know who else didn't ask questions? Whoever answered that door to let her in. And if they did, their questions didn't matter because they're not even mentioned in the text. See, this mama, interestingly enough, isn't even known as a mama or a mother or a bruh, because nowadays that's what they call us. It's not mama or auntie. The young people are just saying bruh nowadays. But nevertheless, she's known as the Syrophoenician, and we know that it's because of the conversation that Jesus had with her. Because of who she is, it is because that's the reason that Jesus had this conversation. Because Courage showed up with Jesus too, but in a way that has always left me wondering. But before we go there, let's go here. The Syrophoenician mama was desperate for her daughter's healing and deliverance. She was desperate for peace in her household and in her life. Have you ever been desperate for something? Have you ever had a need that was so critical that you were willing to do whatever it took, without harm to anyone, of course, to resolve that need, to get answers to the questions, to get help, and to get peace? The woman who came here on Friday, Anita, did, and so did this mama. And because of Courage, she was not giving up. She kept asking Jesus to cast out the demon. She kept asking, but because she heard about Jesus, about who he was and what he was able to do. She kept asking because she knew this was likely the best chance she had for healing and peace and deliverance for herself, for her daughter, and for her household. She kept asking, using her voice to get Jesus' attention and let him know that she was standing 10 toes down, steadfast, unmovable, and unshrinkable. And she got his attention. And it was because of the courage in her voice. Then Courage showed up in Jesus' voice in his response to her in a very rash way, saying that the children were to receive the bread first and it shouldn't be thrown to the dogs. Excuse me, Jesus. Did you just refer to this woman and her race of people as little dogs? We know that you're tired, Jesus, and we know that you need rest, and we know that you want to stay hidden, but guess what? You're Jesus, and hiding isn't an option. And this woman is in a crisis situation, so don't take it out on her, Jesus. This mother who came to you frantically yet respectfully to get help for her daughter, for herself, and for her household. How would you like it, Jesus, if someone talked to your mother that way? And as my beloved granny would say, don't get beside yourself, Jesus. We know you're 100% man and 100% God, but the human side has a little attitude that needs adjusting right now, Jesus. But you weren't the only one, Jesus, who had courage. Because courage turned up the volume within this mama who had a very respectful, sharp, and sincere response. She courageously and correctly spoke these words when she said, "You're right, Jesus, but even the dogs get the crumbs." See, though she was Greek and Syrophoenician, or a Gentile as some texts say, she was also human. And she was human, and she was a mama who was in need of who was a mama who was in need. And she was desperate for change, desperate for healing, and desperate for peace in her daughter, herself, and her household. You all know what it's like to care for someone and know that healing and change and peace is a must for them. It's a must for you. It's a must for the situation at hand. And you'd say what you needed to say to Jesus too, and to the doctor, and to whomever else you needed to for the sake of resolve. And when you do that, you activate courage. See, regardless of what Jesus said to her, she remained consistent even in her response. She didn't back down to Jesus or to Jesus' words. Why? I'm glad you asked. Because of consistency, persistence, and determination. And these three things together ensure results. Even when Jesus responded in a way that felt dismissive, she did not allow consistency or courage to be dismissed. She didn't allow her voice to be silenced. She was heard loud and clear. So much so that in Jesus' next response, it was toned down a lot more. Jesus did not say for doing this. Jesus said for saying this, your daughter is free. Her words, her voice, her consistency, her desperation all came into play because of her love for her daughter, for herself, and for her household, for her need for peace and for change and for healing. It led her to engage courage and activate results. The word activate means to put in motion or to put in action. So because of her voice and because of the courage in her voice, she activated and put into motion the healing, the peace, and the deliverance that her daughter needed, that she needed, and that her household needed. And so what is this courage? I'm glad you asked. It is a state of mind. It is a disposition, a way of being that allows us to be able to face danger and risky situations without the kind of fear that stops us. And we all have it. And we all use it at different times in our lives for different reasons. The woman who came to visit us on Friday, Anita, she enacted courage for peace and relief and a reminder that God had not forgotten about her. And then this Syrophoenician mama used it for deliverance and peace for herself, for her household, and for her daughter. She used it to make her voice and her words unforgettable and undeniable. And Jesus let her know that her voice mattered. Again, when he said to her, for saying this. That means that Jesus not only heard what she said, but he listened to what she needed. Because he let her know that you can go home now. The demon is out of your daughter and she is okay. As we enter this week, let us engage courage. Let us lean into that state of mind to face the hard things and the challenges, and sometimes the challenging and hard people. Let us lean into our faith and remain consistent no matter what. Let us remember that our voices matter. Even when the situations of life may try to silence us or dismiss us, let us remember that our voices matter. And let us continue to trust that the Lord hears us and listens to us when we speak with our words and our actions that engage courage. Let us remember that our voices matter, and that no matter who else does or does not say so, God does, and that God is going to see us through these moments. Thanks be to God.